There's a chart that I think shows us everything that we need to know about the economy, about finance, about politics, about society. It's, I think, it's one of the most important charts of the last 50 to 100 years. I think that economists and historians and social scientists in the future are going to be poring over it and studying it. And I'm going to show it to you in a sec, all right? But I just want to underscore that it's more than a chart. It's telling a story about history, about the present, about the future. And it's telling a really cataclysmic and catastrophic story, okay? So here's the chart, and I'm going to explain it to you. So what this is a chart of is income, right? What people are earning, including their benefits, as a share of GDP, as a share of the economy, all right? And this chart is telling us one of the most dramatic stories of the last century. What it's saying, look at the two pink circles. I've circled them for you. One is on the right, one is on the left. So the right is where we are today. Now look at the one on the left. What this chart is telling us is that people's incomes are back to Great Depression era levels, okay, as a share of the economy. The area that I circled for you on the left, you see the gray stripe, the gray line running vertically along it, up and down? That is the Great Depression, okay? Startling, no? So this is actually historical data, all right? And what this data is telling us, again, is that people's incomes, right, what they're making, what they're earning, what they're spending their lives working to earn, is back down to a share, back down to Great Depression era levels, okay? Now, this chart also shows us that people's incomes peaked in 1970, and since then, as a share of the economy, peaked in 1970, and they've been steadily falling ever since. So, like I said, I think this is one of the most important charts in modern history, okay? And I'm gonna walk you through exactly what it means, why I say that, all right? And we're gonna discuss what it means for finance, economics, and politics, all right? So, I wanna begin by underscoring how cataclysmic and catastrophic this chart really is. It's hard data. This is not my data. This is coming from a place called FRED. FRED is the Federal Reserve's data sets, all right? It's about as authoritative a data source as we have. And this data series that is showing us this was created during the Great Depression to get us out of the Great Depression. Because before that, we didn't have economic data. Some of the things that happened in that era was that we started actually creating economic data, all right, to understand how do we get ourselves out of the depression, all right? So this is real stuff. This is a fact about the world, all right? And some of you, and I'm not saying all of you, but some of you, right, you have a bad habit. Let me just be Uncle Omer for a sec. Forgive me, all right? Let me just be Uncle Omer for a sec. Bad habit where I give you sort of statistics like this, and I'm trying to teach you facts about the world that are very important for you to know. And you say, oh, what's the big deal? I already knew that. Listen, if you actually already knew this, good for you. I doubt that you did, because this is serious, right? You have to do a lot of digging in the economic data to find this. So, again, this is reality. This is a fact that I'm trying to teach you about. And I don't want you to dismiss it. I want you to see how cataclysmic and catastrophic it is to say that people's incomes are back to Great Depression era levels. We often have this question, right? Are we headed for another depression? Is sort of AI going to take us there? Is, you know, our systems crashing and burning all around us, they're going to take us there? Well, this chart is telling us is that for people, the average person, they're already right at a similar place. Okay, and I'll do another video just discussing that. For now, we're going to focus on the sort of basic implications of this chart. So why do I say this chart is so important? What is it teaching us? What is the story that it's telling us? Well, we play this game in America. I call it the "How is the economy really doing" game, all right? And the way it works is that pundits and New York Times columnists, and you know the kind of guys that I'm talking about, right? Talking heads, all right? Love parroting this line, the economy's doing great, all right? Only the economy's not doing great, or at least people don't think the economy's doing great, and this has been going on for decades, right? You have the talking head saying, oh, what's there to worry about? Everything's fine. Meanwhile, the average person is getting more and more desperate. So these days now, we speak of an affordability crisis, right? And basics have gotten unaffordable. Food, transport, healthcare, education, whatever. What this chart shows us is that all of that is super real, okay? When we say that people's incomes as a share of the economy are back to Great Depression era levels, it tells us, right, exactly why people are feeling so dire about the economy, why they're so pessimistic about the economy, why they're constantly sort of on edge, why 70% of people say we're in financial distress, or all these kinds of dire statistics, right? So those are real things, all right? And they're not to be dismissed and taken lightly. This is, in fact, how the Democrats lost the last election, right? They kept telling people the economy's fine, the economy's great, there's nothing to worry about. People disagreed. And Trump won the election on the basis that the economy, people didn't think that the economy was doing very well. And to this day, right, there's this disconnect between America's elites and people, right? America's elites think the economy is doing great. Trump, in the State of the Union, tried to argue that the economy is doing very well. What charts like this show us is that no, for people, average person, income's back to Depression era levels, all right? Catastrophic, cataclysmic. Okay, and I'm going to come to that at the end. Just how catastrophic are we talking? But you should already have some idea that this is pretty dire, right? We're not talking about incomes having slid like 4% or what. You know, when we have these discussions, that how is the economy really doing game, all right? We don't look. Unfortunately, American economists, not very good. American talking heads are, right, jokers. Nobody's looking at statistics like this, which tell you the real story, right? Incomes peaked in 1970, and now they're down to Great Depression era levels. So, of course, people are feeling bad about the economy. They have every reason to, okay? Now, the second thing, and I'm going to come back to that, all right? What that begins to do is answer this question for you, because I want you guys to have an answer to this question. How is the economy really doing? You see, what happens in America is because the economists are not very good, and the talking heads are jokers, is that the average person is left in this haze, this fog. How is the economy really doing? Well, they say it's doing great, but I don't feel it, so where's the truth? I am teaching you the truth. This is the truth. This is the fact. This is the reality, all right? Now you have an answer to the question, how is the economy really doing? And the answer to that question is people incomes are back to Great Depression era levels. It's not a booming economy. It's not a healthy economy, all right? It's a dire, catastrophic state of the economy. So you have an answer to that question, okay? It's a real answer, factual answer, empirical answer, historical answer. Now, what else has happened, and this chart shows us very clearly, is that people's share of the economy has fallen to Great Depression era levels, okay? The economy is still growing, right? This is what we're talking about the other day as phantom growth. What that means is that, you know, billionaires are piling up all the gains from the growth. People are actually seeing less and less back down to Great Depression era levels, right? So, but that's not an economy. Billionaires, like 100 people in the economy, and maybe the, you know, the top 1,000 guys they employ or whatever are also getting mega rich, right? That's not really an economy. And we should never say the economy is booming just because growth is going up, just because billionaires are getting richer when everybody else's incomes are down to Great Depression era levels, you see? So I'm trying to teach you to see through the veil of bad economics to the truth of social and economic reality here, all right? So now you have an answer to that question. How is the economy really doing? And the answer is catastrophically badly, okay? The second thing that this chart tells us, which I think is super important for everybody to know, is how did we get here, okay? What happened during the Great Depression, okay? What is the greatest lesson of 20th century economics? It is that depressions cause fascist authoritarian implosions, okay? This is a lesson of World War II, all right? It's not my lesson, okay? This is genuinely the greatest lesson of 20th century economics. And if you studied your economics, this was the breakthrough that Keynes had that produced a whole new way of thinking about economics after the war. In fact, we rebuilt the world on thinking about economics that way, okay? So all of this chart is telling us exactly how America got here, which is that when incomes slide to depression level, to depression era levels, that predicts a wave of fascist authoritarian implosion, all right? And nobody should be debating now, you know, the old New York Times game, is this fascism? Guys, if the concentration camps are going up, right? Like, if this isn't fascist enough for you, I don't know where the bar is. No sane or thoughtful or educated person should be like, oh, it's fascism yet. It's fascism. All right. So I think we can all agree on that, right? So, but what this chart does is explain to us how we got here. Because one of the things that America doesn't have, and it's amazing that it doesn't have it, is a theory of how it collapsed. Okay? All the pundits and the talking heads are all kind of out to lunch on this. They don't have any theory or any model. It's a mystery to them. And they'll trot out various, kind of nonsense explanations. This is telling you the real one. When incomes slide towards Depression era levels, fascist authoritarian implosions happen. This is exactly what happened in World War II. Okay? It's how Weimar Germany became Nazi Germany. All right? And people sometimes ask me, well, how did you predict all this? Because, a decade ago, I predicted that America would kind of have this fascist collapse, and I wrote a lot about it, and, I got blacklisted from American media for being too dangerous to the whole 9 years. I'll tell you that. I'll tell you that story in other videos and talks, whatever. But the way that I knew, the way that I predicted it, was that I look at statistics like these, and statistics like these have real meanings. Okay, they allow us to predict what happens next in the world. So seeing this trend, it was elementary for me to understand that if incomes are sliding towards Depression era levels, man, bang, we are going to see a fascist authoritarian implosion. Because that's what history teaches us, right? It'd be almost miraculous for us to escape that. So this chart is also super important in a historical and macroeconomic and macro-financial sense. It makes linkages for us between state of the economy, the state of finances, and the state of politics. It tells us, how do societies stop being democracies? How do they implode into fascism and authoritarianism? Well, when people's share of the economy slides back to Depression-era conditions, bang, that's when the fireworks begin. Okay? And that's when people in their anger and despair and feelings of betrayal and abandonment and disappointment turn on each other. They turn to cult-like figures. They give up on the ideas of democracy and progress. Okay? Peace. All right? This becomes Darwinian, right? Norms of violence and hate reemerge, all this kind of stuff. And I'll talk about that more in other videos. But the point I want you to understand, okay, is that this chart is that important, right? Looking at it, I predicted where America was going to go. And looking at it now, we can see. Remember, I told you, this chart answers the question, how is the economy really doing? Well, Depression-era condition, level incomes for the average person, okay, as a share of the economy, all right? And it also tells us how deep, a hole America is in, what the reality of this collapse is, okay? Now, the reason that I say, and I want to emphasize this, right? The reason that I say this is catastrophic and cataclysmic is that it raises the question. If you look at a chart like this and you don't think that it's catastrophic and cataclysmic, well, where is your bar, right? Do incomes have to slide back to, like, I don't know, serfdom levels, peasantry levels? Are we talking about, like, right, Les Miserables? Where do incomes have to end up? Are we going back to the Middle Ages for you to say it's catastrophic, cataclysmic? Are we going all the way back to the Stone Age? Right? This is as catastrophic a chart as you can have in the modern era, because it tells us we've rewound a century. Okay? That's a lot of time and a lot of progress to lose. All right? If that is not catastrophic and cataclysmic enough, and part of my criticism in all of this, and you can hear it, right? I've raised it a number of times with you, is that America's economists, America's talking heads, America's intellectuals, doesn't take this stuff seriously. It doesn't even look at this stuff, really. And that's how you get to these joker narratives. Oh, the economy's booming. No, dude, the economy's not booming. It's a depression era incomes out there for people, right? So that's why nobody can afford anything. So the reason that I raise this criticism is that, everybody should know facts like this and understand what they teach us, what they have to say about the world. All right? So that's a lot for one video. In fact, I think I'm going to make some more about this chart because I think it's that important. All right? Comments, questions, leave them below. And thank you for listening. I'll talk to you soon.